My name is Alison Carter. I'm 35 years old. And until last week, I thought I knew who I was. I thought I came from a normal family, maybe a little distant, maybe a little cold, but nothing unusual. My dad was quiet but dependable. My mom was strict but present. We weren't perfect, but we were whole. Or so I believed. Then he died. A sudden heart attack. No warning, no goodbyes. One moment he was drinking coffee in the kitchen, and the next, he was gone. I flew back home to help my mother. She didn't ask me to, but I knew she needed it. She's not the kind of woman who cries. I didn't sleep that night. I just lay there in my old bed, surrounded by childhood memories I no longer trusted, staring at the ceiling, holding that letter like it might whisper more if I waited long enough. Was it true? Was my entire life based on a lie? At sunrise, I made coffee. My hands were shaking too much to drink it. Mom was already in the kitchen, wearing her usual faded blue robe, slowly slicing an apple like it was the only thing that made sense. I placed the letter on the table between us. She didn't look at it. Didn't even glance. Her knife paused for a moment, then kept moving. I asked you to leave it alone, she said softly. I can't, I replied. You owe me the truth, Mom. Her shoulders sank. Not like someone defeated, but like someone tired of carrying something for too long. She sat down, still avoiding my eyes. You were just a baby, she said. You wouldn't remember him. Him who? Her lips pressed together. Michael. The name hit me like a slap. Not because I recognized it, because I didn't. Michael was someone I loved before your father, she continued. We were young. It was messy, complicated. I thought I had moved on. Is he my father? She finally looked at me then. And in her eyes, I didn't see guilt. I saw fear. I don't know, she whispered. You could have knocked the air out of my lungs. I don't know, she repeated, voice trembling. Your father, James, he came into my life when I was breaking. He saved me, raised you as his own, loved you like his own. So it's possible I'm not his daughter. A pause. Yes. I had never hated silence before. But that moment, it was unbearable. My knees went weak. I sat down before I collapsed. All these years, I said. And you never told me? What would I have said? She snapped. When? On your birthday? Before prom? The night of your graduation? There's no good time to tell your daughter that her life might be a mistake. I clenched my jaw. It's not a mistake. It's a lie. That word, lie, hung between us, sharp as glass. She stood, walked to the window, and stared out at the dying garden. I buried him, she said quietly. I blinked. Buried who? She turned her head slightly. Michael. Or at least, I thought I did. My skin went cold. What are you saying? She didn't answer. And in that silence, I realized something terrifying. This wasn't just a forgotten love story. It was a secret so deep, my mother was still afraid of it. Even now, I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. I buried him. That night, I sat in the attic with a flashlight, digging through boxes that hadn't been opened in decades. School photos, Christmas cards, old report cards. All reminders of a life I suddenly didn't recognize. Then I found it. A small box marked Summer '98. Inside, newspaper clippings. Most of them yellowed and torn at the edges. And right on top, a headline that made my heart drop. Local man presumed dead in house fire. Arson suspected. The photo beneath it showed a burnt-down cabin in the woods. The article named the man, Michael Rivers. Michael. The man from the letter. The man my mother used to love. The article was vague. No body found, presumed dead, case closed. Authorities suspected the fire was intentional, but no arrests were made. The fire happened 2 weeks after the letter was written. I read it twice, then 3 more times. And one thing kept gnawing at me. If there was no body, how could my mother be so sure he was dead? The next morning, I confronted her again. I didn't bother with gentle. You said you buried Michael. Her eyes closed. I meant I buried the part of me that believed he'd come back. That's not the same thing, Mom. She sighed. It doesn't matter anymore. It matters to me. Her hands trembled as she reached for a cup. He's gone, Alison. Let him stay gone. But what if he's not? What if he's alive? Silence. That's when I knew. She wasn't just protecting a memory. She was hiding from a possibility. And I couldn't ignore it anymore. That afternoon, I drove to the county courthouse and requested public records. It took hours, but I finally found something, buried deep in the archives. A police report. Filed by my father. Suspicious activity reported near Forest Cabin. Unidentified man seen arguing with a woman matching Margaret Carter's description. No follow-up. Case marked inactive. I felt sick. My father had reported something. Something about Mom. And then weeks later, Michael's house burned down. What if it wasn't random? What if my father had something to do with it? The thought made my skin crawl. I drove home with my mind spinning. The sun was setting behind the trees, but all I could see was smoke. 25 years ago, someone tried to erase a man. But now he was coming back to life piece by piece. And I had no idea what I was about to uncover. I wasn't the only one who grew up in that house. My sister, Emily, is 3 years older than me. Same straight brown hair, same stubborn chin, but completely different hearts. She left home at 18 and never really came back. We barely spoke these last few years. I thought she was just distant. Now I wonder if she had her own reasons. I called her that night. When she answered, her voice was cautious. Alison. I found something, I said. About Dad. About everything. A pause. Then she whispered. You found the letter, didn't you? The hair on my arm stood up. You knew. I saw it once, she said. Years ago. I was 13. I didn't read it. I just remember Mom screaming at Dad to hide it. She was crying, he was yelling. I never forgot it. My heart pounded. Why didn't you ever say anything? Would you have believed me? I sat down on the floor, stunned. All this time, I thought I was the one uncovering secrets. But Emily had already lived with them for years, alone. Do you think he did it? I asked. Dad. Another silence. I think, she said slowly, that Dad was willing to do anything to keep this family together, even if it meant burning the truth down to the ground. Those words hit hard. Then Emily said something I'll never forget. You were always the golden one, Al. You got the birthday parties, the bedtime stories. I got silence. Stiff hugs. I always wondered why. My throat tightened. Do you think it's because I wasn't really his? Maybe, she said. Or maybe because you were. We stayed on the phone for hours, pulling at memories like threads. The way Dad always corrected Emily but never me. How he would hug me tightly, but only pat her on the back. How he seemed afraid, yes afraid, of losing me. Everything made sense now. In the worst possible way. Before we hung up, Emily said, You're not crazy. You're just finally seeing what I've seen since I was 13. That night, I went back into the attic. I opened the box again. There at the bottom, under all the newspaper clippings, was a cassette tape. Labeled, For her. If I'm gone. The handwriting wasn't Dad's. It was shakier, rushed. It looked like something Michael would have written. I didn't even hesitate. So I went digging again. This time, not in the attic, but in places my father never expected me to look. I found his old filing cabinet in the garage. Locked. Of course. But my father was a creature of habit. I tried the birthday of his first car, 1965. It clicked open. Inside were rows of carefully labeled folders. Taxes, home repairs, retirement plans. And one thin, red folder labeled private. Inside were 2 documents. The first was a printed email, dated just days before the fire in 1998. From Michael Riversette to James Carteret. James. I'm not going away. She has the right to know I'm her father. I'll come to the house if I have to. This ends one way or another. Michael. The second document was a police report. Filed by my father. He accused Michael of trespassing, harassment, and emotional disturbance. But what shook me most was the handwritten note attached. If he comes back, make sure it's the last time. That wasn't a threat. That was a promise. I felt sick. I walked out to the garden, Dad's old garden. Overgrown, full of weeds now. But once it had been his pride. A place of order. Control. Everything about my father suddenly felt different. The man who tucked me in at night. Who taught me to ride a bike. Who never raised his voice, but also never let anyone get too close. He hadn't just erased Michael from my mother's life. He tried to erase him from mine. I went back inside and found Mom in the hallway, staring at an old picture of the four of us. Her dad, me, and Emily. You knew what he did, I said quietly. She didn't flinch. I suspected, she replied. But I never asked. Why? Because if I asked, and he told me the truth, I would have had to leave. And I wasn't strong enough to start over. Not with 2 girls to raise and no one else to turn to. She looked at me then, tears in her eyes for the first time since Dad died. I failed you, Alison. I failed Emily too. I wanted to protect you from the truth. But maybe I was only protecting myself. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. The truth was heavy now. And ugly. My father had lied. My mother had let him. And the man I might share blood with was nearly burned out of existence. All I had was a voice on a tape. A voice that said, "Watch your back." I didn't tell Mom or Emily what I was about to do. Maybe because I knew they'd try to stop me. But I had to know. Michael might be alive. And if he was, I needed to hear the truth from his lips. Not from a letter, not from a tape. From him. The cabin in the article had burned down, yes. But I knew the general area from the police report. Just outside town near Briar Creek, thick woods, mostly abandoned. I drove out there on a gray Thursday, the sky heavy with the promise of rain. There was no signal, no streetlights, just dirt roads and silence. And then tucked behind a curtain of pine trees I saw it. Not the burned-down cabin. Another one. Smaller. Rebuilt maybe. Secluded. Hidden. Smoke curled from the chimney. Someone was home. I parked far away and walked. My heart thundered. Every twig crackled like it was screaming. My hands shook, but I knocked on the door. Silence. Then footsteps. The door creaked open. And there he was. Older. Weathered. Gray streaks in his beard. But his eyes, those eyes, I had seen them before. In the mirror. In my son. "Can I help you?" he asked, cautious. I held up the letter. I think you're my father." His face went white. He stepped back. "Who sent you?" "No one," I said. "I found your letter. The one you wrote to my mom. I found the cassette too." He stared at me for a long time. Then opened the door wider. "Come in," he said. "Before someone sees you." The inside of the cabin was sparse. Books, maps, a wood stove. It smelled like ash and old memories. He sat down at a table and motioned for me to sit across. "I never thought I'd see you," he said. "Not after what happened. Tell me everything." And he did. He told me how he and my mom fell in love in college, how they were planning to run away together, how she got pregnant, how her parents hated him, how James stepped in at the worst possible time, with money, a proposal, stability. She chose him, Michael said. But not because she stopped loving me. She was scared. He said James threatened him, told him to leave town or disappear permanently. Michael tried to fight back. That's when the threats became real. Then one night, while he was at home alone, he woke up to smoke. "The fire. I ran," he said. "They never found my body because I wasn't in it." "Why didn't you come back?" "I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But James made sure I couldn't. He told people I was unstable. Dangerous. No one would believe me. I became the villain in a story I never got to tell." I looked at him. Really looked at him. This man wasn't a monster. He was a ghost. One that had never been allowed to rest. And now that I'd found him, I had a choice. Bring him back into the world. Or bury the truth again. After that day in the woods, everything changed. I brought Michael back to town quietly. Not ready for a confrontation. Not ready for the storm that was about to hit. I met with Emily first. She didn't trust him. Neither did I. But something in Michael's eyes told me he was telling the truth. We decided to confront Mom. It wasn't easy. She saw him. Her face went pale, then angry, then broken. "I thought you were dead," she cried. "I buried you. I mourned you every day." "I never left," Michael said. "You buried a ghost. Not me." The tension in the room was suffocating. And then came the hardest moment. Emily asked the question we were all afraid to say out loud. Alison, are you really James's daughter? Mom's silence was deafening. Yes, she finally said, tears streaming down. But only because James made sure it was so. Because he promised to protect you from him, Michael. But why? I demanded. Mom told us everything. How James had been a man desperate for a family. How he feared losing us if the truth came out. How he'd done terrible things to keep that family intact. And how she had been trapped between the man she loved and the man who provided. The truth was more complicated than any of us could have imagined. Love and fear twisted together like vines choking a garden. By the end of the night, we were all exhausted. But something had shifted. The lies were out. The family was broken. But it was finally free. The days that followed were some of the hardest in my life. Michael tried to rebuild bridges, to connect with me, with Emily, with Mom. But old wounds run deep. Emily shut him out. She said some things I wish I could forget. Words like liar, intruder, and destroyer echoed in the halls of our family home. Mom was torn between guilt and relief. She blamed herself for everything and nothing at once. And me? I felt like I was losing pieces of my identity with every conversation. One evening, Emily came to me, eyes red and raw. Alison, she said, I'm scared. Of what? Of what this truth means. Of what Dad really did. Of who we really are. I wanted to hold her, tell her everything would be okay. But the truth was I wasn't sure. Family dinners became tense silences. Rooms were avoided. Phone calls unanswered. But through it all, Michael stayed. He told stories of a past none of us knew. Of dreams stolen and hope deferred. He promised to fight for a place in our lives. Not as a replacement, but as a father, a brother, a man who never stopped caring. And slowly, just slowly, the walls began to crack. Not enough to let the light flood in. But enough to let us breathe. Months passed, and life didn't return to normal. But it found a new rhythm. Uneasy, unpredictable, but honest. Then one evening the doorbell rang. It was him. James Carter. My father. He stood on the porch, older, tired, but with the same cold eyes. I hear there's a reunion happening here, he said with a bitter smile. Mom froze. Emily looked ready to bolt. I felt my heart pounding like a drum.